Serious, friends of sociopaths psychopaths, what was your most uncomfortable moment with them? I remember from a very early age that my mom would just stand in the entrance to my room with a knife. This didn't happen very often, maybe 2-3 times a year. When I was 9, I finally asked her why she would do this. I'll never forget how she said this. She looked me dead in the eyes and said that I was a mistake and she was deciding if she should do what she should have done a long time ago. I asked to move in with my grandma a week later. Thinking about how she said it still gets my heart racing 22 years later. I don't know if I can accurately describe it, but every single hair on my body stood straight up. I was paralyzed with fear and I felt like if I moved too suddenly she would strike. Backstory: Mom had me when she was 16 and regularly told me that I ruined her life. She was a habitual drug user and alcoholic. She told me that if she had the money she would have had an abortion. In high school, my boyfriend at the time and I shared a math class together. It was well known we were dating, so I would always take him his homework via teacher's request if he missed. He skipped a lot. I broke up with him over Christmas break. He cheated on me. Math teacher obviously still assumed we were together, so he asked me to bring him his homework. I did. Got to his house, wanting to drop it off at his doorstep. He told me to come in and explain it to him. He locked his bedroom door and started saying crap like, "If I can't have you then no one else can. I could get you back in a second. Just admit it," etc. Then the true kicker: if I killed you or if you died, I would keep your body in my closet or hung behind my door just to frick it. Disclaimer: I never fricked him and I think that killed him. He then proceeded to try to make out with me and jam his hands down my pants. He actually thought it was endearing and had no idea why I was so upset. I got out, called my mom to pick me up, and ran back to the school. He lived close. Terrifying. To this day I'm still horrified about it and him. Last I heard he was trying to be a magician. Looks like Charles Manson, and is in and out of psych wards. We were cleaning our guns. This guy pointed the gun at me and asked me if I trusted him. "Do you think the gun is unloaded?" he asked me. I could be negligent or evil and I could have left a bullet in there. He pulled the trigger, laughed, and carried on cleaning the gun like nothing. He thought it was funny. Someone in our extended family, he offered to kill my cat for me to save a vet bill. The cat wasn't sick or old. He was just very enthusiastic about helping us out with that particular issue. He's not allowed to be alone with pets anymore. He had a gas-powered pellet gun and we were 13 years old, and it was one of my first times being high. He had me against the wall and gave me 5 minutes to choose between him shooting me in the genitals or in the head. If I didn't choose, he said he was just gonna go nuts. I just kinda fidgeted in place saying, "You're gonna kill me." I was 13 and high, and at the end of the 5 minutes he told me he was fricking with me. He also emptied a huge box of matches into the sink one time, and when we all told him not to, he called us cowards and lit it all on fire. He was a major pyro. I'm pretty sure he's in jail now. When he told my GF, sitting beside me at the time, that if she did something horrible to me, and we broke up, that he would murder me for her. I've been long-time friends with a sociopath. He is honestly like my brother. We have developed this relationship where he basically treats me like his moral compass, but it doesn't always work. He is still manipulative and cruel at times, and he does only truly care about himself. But he tries to be a good person because he doesn't want to be a butthole. This being said, my most uncomfortable moment with him would have to be when he was telling me about watching some guy almost die. He was telling me how he knew he should have stopped watching and helped him, but he was too interested in what the outcome would be if he didn't help. It was creepy to know that as hard as he may try to be a decent person, sometimes he still can't help himself. My ex would say headlines. Headlines which meant I would be in the headlines in tomorrow's newspaper because he was going to kill me. Married 1. Last straw was the day I caught his reflection as I passed by. Pure evil and hatred in his eyes. I told him I was leaving the following week. He said, "If I ever see you somewhere with someone else, I won't say a word to you." I said okay. He then added, "I'll just walk up to you and shoot you in your pretty face." I was moving some things out and looked under the bed for a pair of shoes. Found his guns, fully loaded and out of their cases under his side of the bed. I went to the cops. Nothing came of it. Fast forward and he remarries before the ink is dry on the divorce. New wife shoots him in the head and kills him in his sleep. Proceeds to kill herself by ODing on his pain pills. Yeah, I sleep better these days. This kid in my 8th grade class. He showed us a video of him lighting a cat on fire while it was alive. He thought it was funny. We reported the video to the school and he was apprehended next day. My sister is a sociopath. It took me a lot of years to realize this and stop rationalizing it. I'm a diabetic and have been in comas. During the last one in 2015, after a year of no contact, she showed up at the hospital saying I had expressed to her that my wishes were do not resuscitate. About 12 of my friends shut her down and I woke up 3 days later on my own. If I had coded during that time, however, there would have been a lot of grey area around if they were allowed to revive me. About 4 months later she took out a life insurance policy on me and asked me to sign it. I said no lol. I no longer speak to her. I dated one once. Didn't realize it until much later when the abuse was so thick I couldn't breathe. The one situation that sticks out the most was one night. Completely unsolicited. He looked at me solemnly and said if you ever left me I would find you and kill you. 11 years of crap like that. Suffice to say I'm glad I've got an entire country between myself and him now. I dated someone who I now believe is a sociopath. The most uncomfortable thing while we were dating was that he would constantly whisper things in my ear in public, in earshot of other people, like, "Do you think I look hot right now or do you think I'm cool?" And the first few times I thought he was joking so I laughed, and he'd get angry. He wanted a serious answer. He wanted me to tell him how much I wanted to jump his bones right there in front of all of our friends, while they were watching and listening. I'd get lectured afterwards like, "You know, you really insulted me personally when you laughed at me in front of everyone." He could also cry on cue to get what he wanted, and as soon as he got what he wanted, it would instantly switch off and he'd turn very serious and tell me what a horrible person I was. The instant emotional switches are disarming. When he broke up with me I went from being his favorite person in the world to instantly at the very bottom of his crap list. He laughed when I cried on multiple occasions, calling me ridiculous. What's very alarming about people like him is how many people they can get on their side with their charm. None of his current friends know anything about his behavior behind closed doors. And they're all new people. All the people who caught on when we were dating are gone from his life. He has convinced his new friends that I'm a psychopath because I tried to tell others what happened, so whenever I say anything about what a creep he is, I get brigaded by the new people who are now being manipulated. Also, he is completely dead in the face and eyes until you interact with him, and then it's like he becomes animated. My uncle. We found out things in bits and pieces. My dad and him work together. He got my dad fired by saying all sorts of lies to their boss, and then pretended to be the white knight by offering him a job in another country where he's living. Money was tight back then and we were in a lot of debt, so dad agreed. He took him there, gave him work, but also made him a slave to his wife and kids who also lived there. Dad was expected to cook food, wash the dishes, clean up the dining table after uncle's family ate, and then eat himself. Yeesh. Dad didn't tell us until much later. According to the rule set by uncle, he wasn't to contact us often, should mind his own dang business even if his daughter didn't turn up at home all night, and keep his mouth shut about work. Dad was miserable there and we couldn't do much because, again, that job was a welcome relief to us. Uncle, meanwhile, would come every night to our home, have breakfast and dinner that my mom generously cooked because his family was abroad, while bitching about my dad in front of us. One day I had finally reached my breaking point and I started crying because I felt horrible for dad who was trying so hard to make things right for us. Uncle just sat opposite to me smiling. God, I'm smiling. Will never forget that psycho grin on his face. Days later dad suddenly turned up unannounced at home. Turns out he'd been dumped by uncle to our city without prior notice. Dad didn't have the guts to tell us what happened. We realized uncle was a psychopath later. He'd routinely mentally torture people and enjoy their misery while pretending to offer sympathies and help. He's in a powerful spot, so he offers his victims jobs. Once they accept, he makes them entirely dependent on him. He'd then put his victims under even more psychological stress, be it threatening to cut off ties or getting them fired if they disagreed with him. My dad was really messed up for days. He'd swing from utter despair to not speaking for days to extreme violence to absolutely broken. Got beaten up a bit for trying to calm him down. Dad could finally regain his mental sanity after we cut off all ties to that uncle. Last we heard, he wants to contact my dad because they're brothers and people realized what a piece of crap he is, so they avoid him too. Dad's like, oh heck no. When he would tell a story that I was a part of and make up huge lies of what happened. Even sometimes switch his role and mine. And I would just awkwardly nod my head and wonder if he truly remembered it that way. I was making some brownies. My sister was visiting for some reason. Maybe it was Christmas. Anyway, I like my brownies gooey and hot, so I'm cutting into them a little earlier than I should. The sister flips the frick out and starts beating on me, grabbing heavier and more dangerous weapons from whatever she can reach. Pans, rolling pins, etc. It becomes a scuffle where she keeps screaming stop hitting me while all I'm doing is grabbing her wrists to avoid taking one to the head. Maybe it's not the most uncomfortable she's made me or the most evil thing she's done. And she's done worse to people we aren't related to, I know. But when people ask why is your sister so crazy, that's the memory that comes into my head. Her gigantic freak out over brownies that I was making. I knew this kid in 8th grade, Michael. I considered him a friend, but he was absolutely loony. He was simultaneously a dong but likable because he was really funny. He'd constantly pit friends against each other and encourage people to fight each other. I always knew something was sort of off. Then some girl he dated said he arped her. Oh, and he'd brag about fricking his dog. Guy was off. I have a friend who's a pathological liar. He's also mostly Scottish in heritage. Northern Scotland, where the Viking influences. He's 6'8", 350 pounds when he's watching his weight, 400 plus when he isn't, and there is a lot of muscle to go with everything else. The lies aren't all that awful most of the time. He's known as a very entertaining storyteller and everyone knows he'll embellish greatly from time to time. But he can't keep a girlfriend. Apparently he can't be honest, is a pathological cheater. The lies catch up with his relationships in a few weeks at most. One day we were in a taxi together and he got the idea that the driver was taking a route that was unnecessarily long. He stopped the cheerful story he was telling me mid-sentence. His face changed and he barked at the cab driver in a voice I'd never heard, loud and angry and aggressive. The cab driver immediately pulled over and let us out without paying, and a good thing too. I think my friend was about to kill him. I was petrified in my seat. I felt like he might kill everyone in range. I was terrified. It was the last time I spent time with him, though I'd known him for 20 years. I later learned that he won't associate with someone after they've seen him snap, as one of his other ex-friends put it. He told me I must be seriously mentally ill for being upset that he, while dating me, propositioned my married best friend. By far figuring out how dangerous she actually was. I grew up with her until she was removed from the house due to trying to burn it down with us in it. She said it was a suicide attempt. Okay, whatever, maybe. Years later I find out her house burned down with her disabled daughter in it. She said it was an accident, candle or some BS like that. A possible coincidence, but highly unlikely. She did other things too. For example, poured paint over every item I owned when I was around 10, slept with a knife under her pillow, etc. My best friend in high school was a sociopath, though I didn't realize it until later in life. He was good looking and astoundingly manipulative. He could talk pretty much any girl into bed. I was always a bit socially awkward and never got laid at that age. Whenever I confided in him that I liked someone, he would target them and frick them. They could be a nice girl, virgin, whatever, it didn't matter. He was that good. One of the most uncomfortable moments of my life was after we graduated and we were hanging out, and he got invited over to a girl's house who we graduated with. He knew I thought she was cute, said it was a party and that she had said she liked me. Well, we got there and it was only her roommate, and her roommate's boyfriend, and I didn't drive. He immediately goes in her room and fricks the girl. I was really peed off and confronted him about it. Of course he made me seem like the butthole and told everyone that I invited myself over and made me feel sad and pathetic. I completely lost it and broke down crying in anger and felt ridiculous. Luckily her roommate was nice enough to drive me home. That was his MO. He wasn't violent or anything, but he liked hurting people emotionally. That night was the last night I ever spoke to him. I still feel stupid for being friends that long. My ex-husband told me he took my dog to his friend's house to live. Find out a year later that he took her to his father's land and shot her multiple times because the first was not enough. He proceeded to skin her and take out her parts, pulled out her heart and showed his friend laughing. Told me his friend was being a coward about it. He laughed and was completely unaware of any wrongdoing. So glad I'm out of that situation. Disgusting human being. What in the frick? Probably when I found out he was dating 3 other girls at the same time, and the girls and I exchanged screenshots of conversations with him. How creepily similar the way he spoke to us all. Charming, nice dude. Unless you don't give him what he wants. I'm an ex-friend of a sociopath. I think it was when we were hanging out and we started arguing about me going to his house. I had left my wallet there and I told him this and told him we needed to go back so I could get it. He then started claiming that his parents didn't like me and didn't want me at his house. He said since they weren't home that would just make it worse. I just kept saying I need my dang wallet and that he could get it for me. He proceeded to call me selfish and a monster for arguing with him. Like he yelled it in my face in a public area. I was shocked and had nothing to say. Then he proceeded to act like nothing happened, asking me if we should get food, etc. I eventually got my wallet back from him. He didn't spend any money of mine or anything, but needless to say we aren't friends anymore. Honestly, I didn't even consider him a sociopath until telling my therapist about how he manipulated me into thinking everything was my fault and how me being better mentally was never enough. She basically told me straight up he's a sociopath and it clicked. He used me just to fill his ego. My sister feels nothing but rage. When she doesn't feel rage, she feels literally nothing. She spends her life manipulating everyone around her and satisfying that rage. She mercilessly abused me growing up. She tried to kill me 3 times before I moved out. No one believed me. Because I was older and larger, I was always considered to be the aggressor. Even when I was being violently assaulted in my sleep, living with her was a nightmare. The most uncomfortable moment between us wasn't something she did to me. It was something I considered doing to her. I'd been sent up to the crawl space to get an ornament. You could only access it from a ladder in the garage. When I grabbed it and turned around, she was at the top of the ladder, staring at me. There wasn't any room for her to come up. She was just waiting there, staring. She told me to get out of the way, and I told her I couldn't. There wasn't room for 2 people in the crawl space. She'd have to go back down the ladder. She immediately switched to rage. She said she hated me, and she wasn't going to let me down from the crawl space. It was 110 degrees in there, and I was already exhausted. I remember thinking, she's at the top of a ladder, over a cement floor. I could make this stop. I'd just say it was an accident. I'm only 12. No one would convict me. As soon as I thought that, her face suddenly went blank, and she went back down the ladder. A friend of mine is a functioning psychopath. He has some severe anger issues but knows on a logical level, not an emotional one, what the implications of unleashing this are. He has no remorse. He could kill his mother and not care, but he knows this is morally wrong. Even if he doesn't feel it's wrong. He can also be extremely manipulative with no remorse, and I've seen that come out to play sometimes and it isn't pretty. His ego is well endowed. He's got one of the highest pain tolerances that I've seen, part of a suspension group, and he's a really great cuddler. To meet him he's pretty strange, but all in all he's a decent person and I admire that he's decided to be better than his diagnosis. She used to brag about her therapist diagnosing her as a sociopath, and then obviously deny it when it was ever brought up. I think the moment that put it all into perspective was when she manipulated me into having a threesome with her and her ex. She knew I was in love with her, because she thought it would get him to take her back. I was in the mental hospital with him. He was my roommate. He was a diagnosed sociopath while I was just in there for a suicide attempt. He jizzed all over the toilet, sink, and shower handle, and laughed at it. He made my bathroom unusable and the staff thought I was trying to be funny when I reported it. He's still one of the funniest guys I've ever met, even though he was in there for making homicidal threats. He once tried to manipulate me to come in and work basically 50 hours, 10 of which would be off the clock so that I didn't get overtime, because he knew that if he could keep labor low on his shift he could get a promotion. He would also expressly lie to my face about giving me a break, saying verbatim, "I'll come back here in a moment and take over, so that you can go on break." Then he would just never come. Then when the time has passed to where a break would be irrelevant, that is, 30 minutes before my shift is over, he'd offer again. My ex invited me over to her house to catch up. I assumed she was being genuine because she had a boyfriend at the time and it had been 3 years since we broke up. But before I came over, I told her that I just wanted to catch up and nothing more. I said that I'd leave if she tried to hook up with me. I did this because I knew she had cheated on her boyfriend before. She promised me that she just wanted to catch up and that she didn't have any ulterior motives. I knew that she was a psychopath and that she took medication for it, but I didn't really think about that. Stupidly, I went over to her house. Within 30 minutes, she was trying to make a move on me. I told her that I was uncomfortable and wanted to leave. She said to me, "Number, you can't. You're going to stay the night and sleep with me." I told her that I was really uncomfortable with that and tried getting up. She pinned me down and flicked the light switch so I couldn't see anything. I tried pushing her off of me, but she was holding me down. I convinced her to turn the lights back on and she did. After she flicked the lights back on, she pointed to the wall right behind us and said, "You see that mark on the wall? That's the mark from when I stabbed the wall with my knife." That's when I was certain that she was off of her meds. I spent the following few hours trying to calm her down. I was able to do so and then got the frick out of there as fast as I could. She told me that if my mom were to ever sleep at our future house, that she will murder her while she is asleep in the middle of the night. Nobody says that crap about my mom or anyone in my family. Haven't talked to her in like 5 months now and I'm very glad she's out of my life. My sister and her daughter. My niece has straight up told me she's killed animals, but after seeing my reaction she said they were accidents. She is not allowed to hold my baby nephew anymore because she drops him. She says he's being squirmy, and again, it was an accident, but the look on her face and in her eyes was a look I used to see on my sister's, her mom, face when she would try to hurt me as kids. She is also not allowed at my house because she terrorizes my pets. I caught her throwing my kitten into her travel carrier and shaking it hard. Thankfully my kitten was fine. This was after I caught her throwing shoes at my senior cat to get him out of my closet. The similarities between her and her mom are terrifyingly uncanny. It brings up a lot of bad memories from childhood. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.